Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you. I like to see your Cardinal hat.
Sorry to be so casual. I was not supposed to come in today, and I'm trying to hide my office, but I've got my wife's husband's girlfriend thinks she has coronavirus, and I saw her about a week ago. So I'm I'm hiding out in here and trying not to talk to anybody other than over the video and phone, but just trying to get some work done in my office. So
Wow.
Hopefully it's nothing. I mean, we don't, my family and I feel fine, so it's probably nothing, but better safe than sorry.
Well, we wish you the best, and thank you again for joining us. We appreciate your time very much.
Not a problem. I don't have a whole lot of anything new this week. Other than to confirm that nothing has gotten worse. So that's the benefit we have. I think as I probably told everyone last week, I started getting summonses issued in St. Louis City. It's my understanding that I heard an interview with the sheriff yesterday on the radio where he did confirm that the court is reopening, I don't want to say in full, but for people coming in on July the 6th. So for those of you going and file yourself, July the 6th in the city is going to be your day, barring someone coming down with coronavirus in the courthouse, that you'll be able to go in and file things easier yourself and get court dates and start the process. I anticipate everything's going to be video court appearances for the next, at least until August, just based upon the timeline. So, the fact that you're on this call means you're at least somewhat familiar with online video conferencing. So it shouldn't be a problem. And in a way, it may be easier on you to an extent, particularly if your tenant doesn't show up. But really nothing else has happened for those of you who who listened to me last week. So it's kind of been, and at this point I'll take nothing else happening because, when things happen, they tend to get worse.
What about St. Charles? Do you have anything different there? Or is that still?
No. I haven't heard whether St. Charles is expanding. I know that in the last 2 weeks they've gone from only doing rent and possession cases to doing collection cases and things like that. But as I understand it, they're just plugging along. They may be. I know they're supposed to be relaxing every 2 weeks the amount of people they can allow into the courthouse or the courtrooms at the same time. So they may be at 25 people. So they might be doing more in person. I haven't been out there in a couple of weeks, thankfully. So I don't know when my next. I don't think I'm going to St. Charles until sometime in July. So I don't have any real updates on how things are changed in person, but they were pretty good. St. Charles was pretty good about the way they were, everyone was wearing masks. Everybody was getting their temperature checked. They were pretty cognizant of the whole issue. So I think they're pretty making sure, they're pretty focused on not having to close back down. More so than Jefferson, which I'm always worried the way they're doing things that they're going to end up having to shut down with somebody coming down with it. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but that's my concern with the courts that aren't taking it quite as seriously.
Okay.
So the county, we don't have a whole lot of information other than we do anticipate, I think Christine found out yesterday that she is getting court dates in the last week of July, the 30th. So they might actually start, probably second week of July, they'll start issuing new summonses. So if you're someone who likes to file in the county, you should be able to shortly start hopefully getting summonses to come to court versus they haven't issued any new summonses in the county in a good stretch. So you go from there. We haven't heard anything about the county sheriff, about when they're going to start putting them out for those who have county judgments and they're waiting to evict people. I hope, they might be somewhere like the city. The city and the county seem to be semi-lockstep, but we haven't heard anything that would give us any indication of what their plans are. But I understand that the city sheriff is scheduling now. So if you have executions that you filed previously and they're sitting there and they haven't expired, because one thing, if you're someone who likes to do it yourself and you file it for the sheriff, check your date on the paperwork because these orders expire after typically 30 days. So my guess, if you have any, you're going to have to refile them. But I have heard that somebody was able to go down, file a new one in person, which is better than I've been able to do online with the execution department and get an execution date. So you may be able to go down there on your on ones that you already have judgments on and get the sheriff at least scheduled. Now you won't get this, they won't do it until the middle, early July, but at least go down there, get in line, get on the schedule, and barring anything, anything happening negatively as far as a bunch of sheriffs coming down with it, they should let us evict people.
Okay.
Hey, Chris.
So
this is
that's
Diana.
about all I have for a general update. So
Okay. Yeah, I think Diana had a question.
I can't hear. Was she asking a question?
She sent me a message, but go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, thank you. I was able to join. I was listening, and we just caught the very tail end of a show on NPR or St. Louis Today or whatever, the local public radio station, on our way home. And there was someone from the county. I don't know whether the county or the city, like I said, we just caught the tail end of it. And there were two comments made. One was that whoever it was, or maybe it's all the jurisdictions, are going to be providing extra free legal representation for anyone facing an eviction. And two, there was someone on there from a sheriff's department, we don't know who it was, and he basically quoted, we don't want to be known for, and we are not in the business of evicting people from their homes. And, and he kind of left it at that. And then they ended the program because the
Yeah,
time
I
was
listened
up.
to the majority of that interview. I had
Okay.
in my car yesterday. They played it a couple times. What you were listening to was Vernon Betts. He's the sheriff for St. Louis City, and also Lee Camp, who works for Arch City Defenders, and Sam Streckmeyer. I'm going to mess up his name. He's from EHOC, and they were mostly talking about defending folks who are landlords are trying to illegally put out, and talking about the ramifications of people who are legally put out. What Sheriff Betts was trying to do was basically, I don't know, put a positive spin on what they kind of have to do. He was saying they don't like to evict people, but they've got court orders and they have to enforce them. So
Okay. Yeah, I didn't hear that part. So okay.
yeah, no, I wouldn't. No, I mean
Okay.
It does kind of inform why they've been a little bit slow on starting it up. That they don't, I think there's some, I want to say, human nature going into wanting to slow down evictions during things, but he started off the interview saying, we've got to do it. We've got a judge's order telling us we have to do it. So I wouldn't worry about, the sheriff's compassion getting in the way of putting out a tenant. And I wouldn't worry about it. As long as you've got a legal judgment, there's nothing that any of the attorneys can do. They were mostly talking about, especially Arch City has resources where they can help people who are being evicted to find them somewhere to go, somewhere to go out. So both those attorneys on there, I like a lot. They're easy to deal with, and they're just there to protect people. If people don't, your tenants aren't doing things the right way, there's not for them to do. They're just there to prevent. They were mostly talking about landlords taking things in their own hands, trying to force people out before the sheriff comes out there.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I have a comment. This is Tanya Collins. Good morning.
Morning.
I have an eviction case that it was originally scheduled for June 2nd. It got, my tenant didn't show up. And so then it got rescheduled for the 23rd, I think it was, or 24th. And my tenant did show up for that one. But every case that my attorney had got a blanket postponement until July 21st. And he said, and most likely it's going to get postponed one more time before.
He's right. This is in St. Louis City, I'm assuming. If they
it's
were
in Jennings.
Oh, Jennings. Okay. So they're depending. I don't know exactly how the counties is doing. Every judge is doing things differently. So my guess is if they just gave a blanket continuance, that judge is doing different than our judge in the county, which, sorry, I thought I had my phone on. do not disturb. Our judge in the county, was letting us take default judgments or in letting us set cases for trial when we did that this week. But if your attorney's judge wasn't letting you set cases for trial and just was doing, hey, everything's getting continued till July for us to talk again, then yes, it's possible with the tenant actually showing up that if your attorney can't get your tenant to work something out between now and July 21st, that they will need to get the case set for trial. But most of these the city and the county are letting the judges, their particular judges, play with the dockets as they see fit or as they see the best way to move them forward and to give everyone time to be heard. So that's not what our judge is doing in the county. It is what our judge is doing in the city. But our judge in the county is actually, he would have set the case probably for trial. But that is, your attorney's kind of at the mercy of his or her judge. And
it's bogus.
and so my guess is realistically, if your tenant wants to be, dispute it and drag the case out by setting it for trial, you're probably looking at a trial sometime. And I would, maybe you get lucky late July, but probably early August. So, and I'm sure your attorney will have a better idea of what the judge's scheduling turns out being.
He seemed to think that it would get postponed one more time.
Yeah, and he's probably anticipating that the tenant's going to show up and demand a trial, and that would be why it would be one more time.
So what do you think of the idea of me requesting a different judge?
That's honestly, it's probably either if you request a different judge, each judge is going to, at this stage, it's going to only be set for trial. So you can't get it set for trial right away. So I would think requesting a change of judge, and your attorney's going to know best, but my guess is that it's only going to drag things out longer, because when you change of judges in St. Louis County, sometimes they do it quickly. I did a change of judge out there. Luckily, it wasn't one that was urgent, but it took them 3-4 months before I got a new judge assigned. And so I wouldn't, at this point, it's not going to be as fast as normal, but I would not, if I was your attorney in that one, I would not be rocking the boat. But your attorney might know differently. And some of us, we know certain judges, we know the right clerks. Sometimes you can get things moving, but my guess, if he's telling you to stay in that division, it's he's probably telling you the right thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Harry, do you have a question there?
Yeah, so in the city, is it pretty much a case where it's 2 trial dates? I mean, 2 postponements. They don't show up the first time, then the judge.
Well, the way the city was doing, June is different from July. They were not giving default judgments in June.
Mhm.
They claim because they say that they wanted the tenants to get multiple notices. I suspect it's because the clerks didn't send out notices the first time around for a lot of these cases. And so, because we've been tasked in my division anyway, the attorneys have now been tasked with sending out notices explaining how to get onto WebEx, all this language that we've been given to do it. And my guess is it's because the clerks, like I had a docket last week where nobody showed up, which tells me the clerks never sent out notice that we were having a docket. So I can see why they didn't give default judgments. So starting in July, they are telling me in the city that we will get default judgments if the tenants don't show. This is not going to be an automatic continuance. They're going to give us default judgments, unless the rug is pulled out from underneath us. I'm making sure on my cases that I hand mail each of these, so there's no excuse that the tenant didn't know they had this WebEx thing. They are telling us they're going to be very lenient for people who can't figure it out, who come in and have an excuse that, file a motion. I want to set aside and this, that, or the other. But for your tenants who really are just ignoring it or waiting for you to evict them, I think we'll be able to move forward in July with getting default judgments. If the tenant shows up, they're telling me in July, they will give me a second trial date. I can't tell you when those are going to be. It's going to depend on the judge. I pester my judge for quicker dates every single time they give me these things. So, but if the tenants don't show up, they are telling us there will be let us take action on on those actual court dates in July.
Yeah, because I know the public libraries were closed, so if they didn't have computers or internet access, they had no way to.
Well, there's a phone number. So if they can get access to a phone, they can call in. Most
Oh,
of these tenants have been calling in on these dockets because a lot of them don't have iPhones, but some of them have computers and iPhones. Most of them have been dialing in.
okay. I was just curious. I didn't know, but with the libraries being closed, they had from my perspective, they had a legitimate argument for not being
Oh, I
able to
mean,
get.
they do have a legitimate argument for not making it. It's confusing on top of things. I mean, heck, I've been using computers and have all access stuff. It's still sometimes confusing to get through the court stuff. So
Mhm.
that's why if they come in, if they come to court, or down the road, they try to file a set aside, the courts are going to be really lenient. They've already told us that in advance about, no, that doesn't mean to say they can wait a month. Well, then you'll have them evicted. But,
Mhm.
if they come in the next week and I didn't know how to call in. I got my date wrong. They're gonna be real lenient on that one.
Yeah, and I can understand that. So are you still able to do the bulk dockets where you got a whole bunch of things
I
with
have
July? Or
on July 22nd. I got assigned 35 cases for that day. So we'll see how that works out. The city, it's not like the county is letting us talk to them while we're on the docket. The city is just, if they show up, they're continuing the case off for another court date for trial or otherwise, or a general court date that we can later set for trial. But they're the understanding that they give us, like, hey, why don't you call counsel at this phone number? Or they give me their phone number. So that's how they're kind of doing it. We're kind of, playing it by ear. But it's so far, it's going relatively smoothly. I mean, it's better than nothing. It's certainly
That's
not
true.
as efficient or convenient as being in person, but it's better than them sitting on their hands and not doing anything and having us, guessing. So I'll take that over nothing at this point. At least tenants know that, they're getting served. I have about 20 phone calls to return of tenants who got served yesterday. I don't know if I'll return them all, but the ones who tell me they want to pay, I'll return.
Yeah.
But we are trying to reach out more to tenants during this process because things can drag out longer, so that if we can encourage settlement discussions. So I'm joking, I'll call them all back, but Harry, yours didn't call, just in case you were wondering.
Oh, I know they're not going to call. I'm not expecting a phone call. Now, I was just wondering with the stimulus money that came back to 1,200, if the judges were even looking at that or.
No, I mean, it
make
doesn't,
anything.
whether they should pay or not pay. I mean, judges don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're not going to judge more. Oh, you should pay because you got the stimulus. I have noticed a lot of my clients who I thought there were going to be a lot more clients beating my door down to file, but with the stimulus money and the unemployment money, people have been able to pay their rent for the most part, which
Yeah.
is not a bad thing, particularly for your landlords. Maybe my bottom line, it's a bad thing, but for the landlords, it's a good thing, particularly in this climate where it's not so fast to put people out or to get pressure on them to actually pay. Where we've seen more problems, I'm sure we've covered this in the past, is in the big complexes where they know they can't be evicted until August, September. And so they're the ones that my clients over there are telling me, the ones who were behind already in general just really stopped paying because they're going, I was behind already and you can't put me out. So I'm just going to ride this out until October.
Wow. You're going to be busy then with all those bulk filings with those big complexes because there's
You're
probably a
telling
lot
me.
of them.
No, which is, it's sad. It's also not a bad thing because I'd like to get a paycheck at some point. So
Yeah. All right.
Hey,
Well,
thank
thanks a
you.
lot.
I think Keith has a question too. Do you have a question there, Heath?
I do. Hey, Chris.
Hey.
I know that there's kind of a leniency given to renters for a little bit. Was there a leniency given to contractors as well?
In what context?
So here's what happened. There was like an 8-week contract that we had with the general contractor. Said they're going to do a home renovation. It is July. They're not done yet. It was supposed to be like February, March. So it kind of hit in the middle of COVID. That was, part of the issue, but also just, have not been good at getting it done. So finally, just this week, we kind of said, okay, you're done. You're out of here. We'll pay you for any materials left and you're out. Is there anything against that?
Can I comment on that?
About something?
I'm not I don't do construction law, just for the start. And there are very specific statutes regarding, just like landlord tenant law with contractors and what you have to do. On a first blush thing, I could say that if you were to file a lawsuit or try to sever a contract, and they were just, so you could see a scenario where they could call COVID some sort of force majeure or act of God, essentially saying that I could not complete my contract in the time frame due to the fact that there was a stay-at-home order. I couldn't get supplies, this, that, or the other. So, I mean, I would think if you were to have a legal dispute, there would be some level of understanding. They could file, affirmative defenses saying, I didn't do it, but because this. Now, again, it's going to be my guess, very fact specific. They're going to, they would have to prove that, I couldn't get lumber because, Home Depot was backed up. I know I'm trying to get some work done in my house, and our contractor's telling us it's not going to be for, they're pretty far behind on getting supplies in, which is fine. I can't pay him anyway, so I'm good with I'm good with him slowing things down. But the as far as specifics, it's going to be a case specific thing. I mean, if you're going to want to talk to maybe an attorney who does that specifically. I don't have anybody I know in that world, but I do know that it's something where you definitely want to have an attorney who knows what they're doing to advise you on something like that. So you don't get. I've seen a lot of people getting legal disputes with their contractors that drag out. In the end, you spend more money on attorneys and fighting it than you would have actually, working it out with your contractor. So,
yeah, we're not.
Sometimes contractors are so far down the road and so bad that you just kind of have to, you have to move on.
We're not looking to file a lawsuit necessarily. We more so just want to say, in case they come, is there something we should be aware of that we should protect ourselves? So
you mean in case they sue you for canceling the contract?
Correct.
I mean, keep track, like anything else, keep track of your communications with them, keep track of, there's not a whole lot you can do until you see if they do it. But
okay.
To protect yourself, I wouldn't think. The only thing I would say is I have a vague recollection that there is a statute with a contractor. I know before, at least you can file suit in certain scenarios where you have to give them certain notice. So you may want to look into whether or not you've given your contractor proper notice to terminate the contract. I don't even know if there is any, but a long time ago, I looked into something about getting into it with a contractor, and I have a vague recollection that there are specific statutes out there that explain what kind of notice you have to give a contract before you, at least you sue him. I don't know if that works before you just cancel a contract, giving them a right to fix the issue or not. So that's something you may want to look into on that front. But I again, not a construction expert, and certainly don't want to pretend like I am.
You bet. One other piece that's kind of interesting with the situation too is that we had a bank that was doing disbursements through a construction loan and everything, and they reorganized the contract with the contractor because they said we want to disperse it differently than what you set it up, and so the contractor signed it but never gave it to the homeowner. And then the bank said, oh yeah, this is only the second time we've ever done a construction loan, so that's why we're so bad at it, and we dispersed all the labor before any labor was done.
Well, then my guess is you're probably not getting sued by the contractor.
Okay. So
there may be some other issues you're running into with the insurance company, but not the contractors going, well, I get the money and I don't have to do the job. This is fantastic.
I know. So it's actually a friend of ours, so we're stepping in to help out. But just want to know before we step in if there's anything we should not step in.
I don't know enough to give you some advice on that. My guess is if you really start getting worried, find somebody, ask around to see if anybody knows an attorney who specializes in contractor disputes.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
No problem.
Harry, do you have another question there?
Yeah, on another part to his situation, the delays could be completely tied to the inspectors, because the inspectors, there was very few inspections going on during that time frame. So the reason for the delays could have been driven by the inspection requirements. And then secondly, there were huge supply chain shortages, because I know I turned down a lot of jobs because I couldn't get the materials that I needed to complete the job. And I didn't want to be in a situation like what he was describing. Then the other thing is if any work was done that didn't require permits, but again, he got paid, you may want to be careful if you did anything that you needed a permit on that you didn't, because there's no time frame on when a municipality can come back and penalize you financially for not having the permit done for the work that was performed. So he could make your life a living hell if he wanted to. And I know a number of contractors that have done that to people that were ignorant. I'm not saying that in this case, but the delays probably were more of a function of the inspectors than the contractor.
Thank you, Harry.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions for Chris here? I know we really appreciate your time coming in. I know it's a lot for you guys to do, and you give us some great advice every week, Chris. We really appreciate that.
Glad to do it. Like I said, I'm trapped in my office today. I can't talk to anybody outside of it. So,
well, looks like you're ready for baseball season, if nothing.
yeah, indeed. I'm still dubious whether it'll happen, but I can be optimistic.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same way. I got my other old hat out yesterday, my work Cardinal hat. So I got my good one and my old one. So I'm ready either way. So.
All right, guys. I think it'll be Kathy next week. I'm, assuming I'm not in quarantine, I'll be hopefully taking some vacation time. So, but
well, we wish you the best. And I think we're off next week, July 3rd. She requested.
Oh yeah, that would be why I'm taking the vacation time.
Well, you enjoy yourself and stay well. We'll see you in 2 weeks, and
right.
we do look forward to it. We will have the replay on our website. By the time it gets done renditioning and everything, it takes me a little while, but I'll have it up hopefully by today, if not by Monday.
All right. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you so much, and everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.